Good evening, dear children. Children, today we are going to do fifth chapter of our English reader book, that is Indigo. So, children, indigo, I hope you all must have heard the term before. You know, the literal translation of the word indigo is Neil, the term that was very popular during the British rule in India, right? So, Louis Fisher, who made a career as a journalist and wrote for the New York Times, the Saturday Review, and for some European and Asian publications, was a member of faculty at Princeton University, right? So the following chapter which we are going to read, right, that has been taken from his book The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, right? So children, the following chapter has not been written as an individual piece of writing by Louis Fisher. In fact, Fisher had written a book entitled The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. So that's why this part Indigo has been taken from that book, right? So the book which I just mentioned has been reviewed as one of the best books ever written on Mahatma Gandhi by Times Educational Supplement, right? So the terms we would read, the events we would come across. So I feel that you will be a bit familiar with all those events and many of the names that would come up in the chapter, right? See, the beginning of this chapter, it seems that a narrator is there, and see how he relates his story. When I first visited Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram in central India, he said, I will tell you how it happened that I decided to urge the departure of the British. It was in 1917, right? So, the narrator here says that he was told by a person, as he has written, he said outside inverted commas, right? He was further narrated by a person, right, who reported narrator that when he first visited Mahatma Gandhi in the year 1942 in his ashram in Sevagram, right? So he said, I will tell you how it all happened. How it all means the events before Indian War of Independence, the events before 1947, like the events how it all went through, right? And that I decided to urge the departure of the British, right? So that was actually a beginning of sending Britishers back to their country, right? He had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. Means the person he had visited the annual convention of INC party in Lucknow in which year? In year December 1916, right? There were 2301 delegates and many visitors, right? So many delegates were there in that congress. During the proceedings, Gandhi recounted, a peasant came up to me looking like any other peasant in India, poor and emaciated, and I said, I am Rajkumar Shukla, right? I am from Champaran. So, see, the name has been revealed. He is Rajkumar Shukla, right? The writer says that during the proceedings, Gandhi recounted, means Gandhi told that a peasant come up to me, a peasant met Mahatma Gandhi, right? So he was looking like any other peasants that are there in India, poor and emaciated. Poor, he was poor, like from his outfit he seemed that he belongs to a poor family, and emaciated means he was weak and thin in his appearance, right? So he reported that his name is Rajkumar Shukla. I am from Champaran and I want you to come to my district. Gandhi had never heard of the place. It was in the foothills of the towering Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal, right? So I hope the very simple language is clear to you. Rajkumar Shukla was a peasant and he was from Champaran, and he had invited Mahatma Gandhi to visit his place Champaran, as he had heard from somebody that Mahatma Gandhi can resolve their problem. So the writer will further reveal what was the problem of Rajkumar Shukla, right? So he just reports that I am from Champaran. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi had never heard the name of that place. Mahatma Gandhi had never heard the name of Champaran before that in his life. Right? So the place was situated in the foothills of the towering Himalayas. Towering means high Himalayas, foothills. Right? So the downhills of high Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal. Right? This is the location of the place Champaran that has become so famous in history. Next paragraph. Under an ancient arrangement, the Champaran peasants were sharecroppers. Right? He says, under an ancient arrangement, Champaran peasants were sharecroppers. So, children, who are sharecroppers? You know, sharecroppers are the people who enter an agreement, right? Who entered an agreement with the England landowners to farm on their land and pay them a certain portion of their income as rent, right? As we often say that they are our tenants, right? Tenants, we often call it kiraidar, right? So those sharecroppers were sort of tenants, kiraidar. They used to work on the land which was owned by British people, and after the harvesting of the crop they used to pay a certain amount as rent of that land, right? I hope the meaning of sharecroppers is clear. Next line. Rajkumar Shukla was one of them. He was illiterate but resolute. Illiterate, I hope you know, he was not educated but resolute. Resolute means the one who is firm in his decision. We often say that we have taken a resolution to do this good thing in this year. That means taking resolution means to do a promise with the self, to do promise with the own self, right? So Rajkumar Shukla was illiterate, but he was resolute. It means he had firmly decided that he would protest against the bad policies of Britishers, right? He had come to the Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar, and somebody had probably said, speak to Gandhi. You know what the writer says? Writer says that Rajkumar Shukla, he had gone to the Congress session to especially meet Gandhi there, right? He had gone to the session to complain about the injustice. You know what was a landlord system that I just described you a minute ago? That how farmers used to work on other people's land and how they used to pay a certain portion of their land income in order to pay the rent, right? So he says that he had come to Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar, and somebody had probably said speak to Gandhi. That means somebody must have suggested him to speak to Gandhi, so that's why he had been there, right? Next paragraph. Gandhi told Shukla that he had an appointment in Kanpur and was also committed to go to other parts of India. Shukla accompanied him everywhere. Then Gandhi returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad. Shukla followed him to the ashram. For weeks he never left Gandhi's side. Fix a date, he begged. Now Shukla has been continuously following Mahatma Gandhi wherever he used to go. At last he implored, he begged, right? He requested him to fix a date for the appointment, right? So Mahatma Gandhi here is actually, testing this person that how committed he is to his task. So see what happens, what Mahatma Gandhi's reaction is. Impressed by the sharecropper's tenacity and story, Gandhi said, I have to be in Calcutta on such and such a date. Come and meet me and take me from there. Finally, Gandhi gives him a fixed time. Gandhi tells him that he is having like some meeting, right, in Calcutta. I have to be in Calcutta means he is having some work, some meeting or engagement in Calcutta on some date. He gives Shukla a date and asked him to come to Calcutta on that date and take me from there and take him to the desired place from Calcutta. Right? So Gandhi was impressed by Shukla's tenacity, Shukla's continuous following him everywhere. So that's why he gives him a particular date for the solution of his problem. Next paragraph. Months passed. Shukla was sitting on his haunches at the appointed spot in Calcutta when Gandhi arrived. Shukla was already sitting there, right? So he waited till Gandhi was free. Then the two of them boarded a train for the city of Patna in Bihar. So I hope that there is nothing to explain. That's very, very easy. That there the two of them means Gandhi and Shukla, they took a train and they left for Patna, that is in Bihar, right? Then Shukla led him to the house of a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later became president of Congress Party and of India, right? Where Rajkumar Shukla took him? Rajkumar Shukla took Mahatma Gandhi to the home of Rajendra Prasad, who was a lawyer by profession. And he is the same Rajendra Prasad who became the president of Congress Party and the president of India later. Right? Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but the servants knew Shukla as a poor yeoman who pestered their master to help the Indigo sharecroppers. Right? So he took Mahatma Gandhi there, but Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but Prasad's servant already knew that this Rajkumar Shukla is a poor peasant, right? So who pestered their master, like who is continuously harassing their master, troubling. Pestering someone means troubling someone, right? And human means a small farmer. So the servants already knew that Rajkumar Shukla has been continuously troubling Rajendra Prasad, right? So they let him stay on the ground with his companion Gandhi, whom they took to be another peasant. And the servants of Rajendra Prasad imagined by themselves that Mahatma Gandhi is a companion peasant who has just accompanied Rajkumar Shukla to that place, right? But Gandhi, he was not admitted to draw water from the well, lest some drops from his bucket pollute the entire source. How did they know that he was not an untouchable? Right? How did they know that he was not an untouchable? So, see, children, the time of untouchability, that custom of untouchability was so prevalent at that time that Mahatma Gandhi was not permitted to take water from the well. Why? Because some of the water drops from his bucket may fell into that entire well and it may pollute the whole of water, right? So see, of course, Mahatma Gandhi was a staunch believer in equality, right? So he was very hostile to such views of untouchability and other social levels. So see what happens. Gandhi decided to go to Muzaffarpur, which was en route to Champaran. En route means on the way to Champaran, right? Gandhi decided to go to which place? Muzaffarpur there, right? Muzaffarpur was on the way to Champaran, right? Why Gandhi wanted to go to Muzaffarpur? To obtain more complete information about conditions than Shukla was capable of importing, right? You know, Rajkumar Shukla was, of course, telling the problem of all the peasants, but particular of his own. Mahatma Gandhi wanted to go to Muzaffarpur so that he can collect the complete information about the conditions of all the tenants, right? Of all the people who are suffering from this problem. He accordingly sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore's Shantiniketan school. So now he would be meeting one of his acquaintances, one of his friends, whose name is Professor J.B. Kriplani, right? So Mahatma Gandhi sends him a telegram. Okay? The train arrived at midnight, 15th April 1917. See, note the year, these are the facts. The train arrived at midnight, and see what happens. Kriplani was waiting at the station with a large body of students. Means it was midnight, but Professor Kriplani was there, and many students were accompanying him. Right? Gandhi stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a teacher in the government school. Right? So it was an extraordinary thing in those days, Gandhi commented, for a government professor to harbor a man like me. Right? For a government professor to harbor. To harbor here means to give shelter. Right? So he was of the view that it was an extraordinary thing in those days of 1970s, that a government professor is hosting Mahatma Gandhi, right? So in smaller localities, the Indians were afraid to show sympathy for advocates of home rule, because people were much afraid of this thing. People wanted to do so, but they were not able, right? So they had their fears in the mind. They cannot show sympathy for the advocates of home rule. So next paragraph. The news of Gandhi's advent means arrival, coming, right? News of Gandhi's advent and of the nature of his mission spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and to the Champaran. These things these things spread like a jungle fire. Like whenever somebody is on mission, and people too want that thing to happen, so the news like these spread in a minute. So the news of Gandhiji's arrival there, and the nature of his mission, means what was his ambition, why he had come to Muzaffarpur, and what he wanted to do actually, all these talks spread in a while, right? Sharecroppers from Champaran. I told you the meaning of sharecroppers, right? Sharecroppers from Champaran begin arriving on foot and by conveyance to see their champion, right? They begin to come by foot and by conveyance. It means they begin to come either by walking or by some vehicles in order to meet their champion, means in order to meet Mahatma Gandhi. It means that they put in all of their efforts because they wanted to meet Mahatma Gandhi, as they have not found anyone else helping them in such a selfless manner, right? Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhi to brief him. To brief him means to explain him the situation. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Mahatma Gandhi, right? They frequently represented peasant groups in court. They told him about their cases and reported the size of their fee. So the lawyers of Muzaffarpur shared with Mahatma Gandhi that these are the cases, these are the problems of the peasants of Muzaffarpur, farmers of Muzaffarpur, and the British government is doing unjust behavior in this manner. They are taking rent in this form, and which is very heavy burden on the peasant brothers, right? So they explained the entire situation to Mahatma Gandhi. But Mahatma Gandhi here remains stuck at the size of their fee, as it is written, and reported the size of their fee. It means Mahatma Gandhi, he got a shock after learning that these peasants have to pay so much of the fee to the, local lawyers, local lawyers, right? So, next paragraph, Gandhi chided the lawyers for collecting. Chided means to rebuke someone, right? Rebuke someone, to scold someone, dantna, right? So he rebuked the lawyers for collecting big fee from the sharecroppers. He said, I have come to the conclusion that we should stop going to law courts. Taking such cases to the courts does little good. Little good means does nothing at all. When where the peasants are so crushed and fear stricken, law courts are useless. The real relief for them is to be free from fear. Right? Here, children, Mahatma Gandhi, so he clearly denied the peasants to knock the gate of court because he feels that court would not provide any justice to them. He's of the view that little justice can be expected from the court, right? He also scolded the local lawyers for charging so much of the fee from the peasants, right? So where the peasants are so crushed means the condition of peasants was so bad, it was actually worse. They remain crushed under the heavy weight of tensions and fear stricken all the time, right? So he was of the opinion that the real relief, it means the real relaxation, can come to their mind if they get free of the fears, right? Next paragraph. Most of the arable land in the Champaran district. Most of the arable means the land which is able to cultivate, right? Cultivable land. Most of the arable land in the Champaran district was divided into large estates owned by Englishmen. It means whatever was cultivable, right? Most of that 90-95% of that land was owned by Britishers, right? And worked by Indian tenants. I hope you can understand. Worked by Indian tenants. Tenants means, as we call it, the people who work on some place and they pay the rent of the same, right? Kiraidar. The chief commercial crop was indigo. I hope all of you know, like we just discussed it, indigo, a blue dye, a blue color, right? The commercial crop was indigo. The landlords compelled all tenants to plant 3/28 or 15%, simply 15% of their holdings with indigo, and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. This was done by long-term contract or agreement, you may say, right? So the thing is that the landlords, means the British people, they compelled, right? They made a compulsion for all the tenants, for all the farmers who were working on the land of English people. They made a compulsion for all the farmers to plant indigo in the 15% area of their land, right? So indigo must be planted, and the entire crop of indigo should be submitted to the government by the end of the season in the form of rent, right? They called it 15% of the harvest. So that was of course a big amount, because peasants also have to bear so much of the charges over the production of the crop, over taking care of it. So they have to go through many things in order to prepare a crop, or in order to like flourish a crop. So see, 15% was mercilessly taken by the Britishers. So this was their actual problem. Next paragraph. Presently, the landlords learned that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. They thereupon obtained agreements from the sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from the 15% arrangement. See, that's the worst that could happen. The Britishers all of a sudden relieved Indian farmers from that 15% submission of indigo, right? What they told Indian farmers, that we no longer need your indigo crop, we don't need it now. Why they don't need it? Because they recently learned that that Germany had developed synthetic indigo, artificial indigo Germany had developed, and therefore they can get it at a very cheap rate from Germany, and that's why they asked Indian farmers to pay them compensation. You know, there was no source for Indian farmers to sell that 15% crop of indigo to anyone else, any local body, right? But the British government insisted them to pay them in cash, like because the 15% of the crop would not be taken by the British government. This was all done after the crop was all ready for selling, right? Next paragraph. You know, children, the sharecropping arrangement was irksome to the peasants. Irksome, so much irritating, annoying, that produces anger, right? Of course, the farmers were angry because they planted indigo on the orders of British government. And if British government is not going to take it as rent, what would they do of that indigo crop? Right? That was useless for the farmers. So what happened? See, when he says that the agreement was not acceptable to those peasants, and many signed willingly, right? So many signed willingly by their own will, by their own intention as well. Those who resisted engaged lawyers. Those who resisted means those who opposed the agreement. So they asked the help of lawyers. They, rented, they hired some lawyers, right? The landlords hired thugs, right? I hope you know the landlords. It's written hired thugs. Thugs means robbers, right? So the people who opposed this agreement, so they employed some lawyers for their help. Meanwhile, the information about synthetic indigo reached the illiterate peasants who had signed, and they wanted their money back, right? So as it is written in the second line, that some of the peasants signed it willingly and some of them resisted. The ones who signed willingly, obviously no peasant, no Indian peasant was aware that Germany had produced that synthetic indigo, right? And that's why British government is not purchasing it from Indian farmers. So the ones who signed earlier, they also begin to protest here, and they wanted their money back because they have now come to know that British government is befooling them, right? So British government is just making fool of all of them. So that's why now they become adamant that they would get their money back, or they want their money back, right? Next paragraph. At this point, Gandhi arrived in Champaran. He began by trying to get the facts. Trying to get the facts means he began by collecting the knowledge, right? Gandhi arrived in Champaran and he began to collect the knowledge. First, he visited the secretary of the British Landlords Association. First of all, he went to the British Landlords Association, right? Sangathan. So the secretary told him that they could give no information to an outsider. Gandhi answered that he was no outsider. Right? That's so simple. So he visited that landlords association, and the secretary denied giving any information to Mahatma Gandhi, calling him a stranger. So Gandhi answered that he was not a stranger. Next, Gandhi called on British official commissioner of the Tirhut division in which the Champaran district lay. Right? He called on British official commissioner. So the commissioner, Gandhi reports, proceeded to bully me. Proceeded to bully means to harass me. Right? He proceeded to bully me and advised me forthwith to leave Tirhut. Obviously, the British official commissioner, who has got to know that some educated person, that some aware and intelligent person is going to help these farmers and they may get their rights by this way, he began to harass Mahatma Gandhi and advised him to leave Tirhut, that place. Right? Next is Gandhi did not leave. Of course, it was not his task to leave. It was not his duty to obey that British government official. Instead, he proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. Several lawyers accompanied him. At the railway station, a vast multitude greeted Gandhi. A big crowd was there. They greeted Mahatma Gandhi, right? When he went to Motihari, right? That was the capital of Champaran, and many lawyers, many advocates were there, right, accompanying him. He went to a house and, using it as headquarters, continued his investigations. Right? What was he investigating? That how this all net of befooling the poor and illiterate peasants was weaved by British government, and how he can resolve it and help his brothers. So, a report came in that a peasant had been maltreated in a nearby village, right? So, they got a report that a peasant had been maltreated, that means ill treated, in a nearby village, right? So as soon as they got this information, Gandhi decided to go and see the place. The next morning he started out on the back of an elephant. He had not proceeded far when the police superintendent's messenger overtook him and ordered him to return to the town in his carriage. Gandhi complied, right? So Gandhi complied. It means that he obeyed that order. He had to obey because he didn't wanted to be in such a hostile behavior at such an early stage, right? So Gandhi had started that journey to see that person who was ill behaved, who was misbehaved, right? So but he couldn't reach him because on the way only a messenger overtook him. A message was sent through a person who ordered him, in which an order was passed to Gandhi that he has to go back, right? So Gandhi complied. Gandhi obeyed that order. The messenger drove Gandhi home, where he served him with an official notice to quit Champaran immediately. You know, the messenger further, he passed on an official notice, right? Notice from the office to leave the place Champaran immediately. Right? Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would disobey the order. Now, this is civil disobedience movement. I feel that you must have heard of it. So Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice. Receipt means a kind of acknowledgement. He acknowledges the notice. It means that he shows that he has read the notice properly and wrote on it that he is going to disobey that order. He will not obey that order. Right? In consequence means as a result of. Gandhi received a summons to appear in court the next day. Of course, because he has disobeyed government order, so summons means court's order, court's call, right? Gandhi received a summons to appear in court, right? So, at night, Gandhi remained awake. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar with influential friends. He sent instructions to the ashram. He wired a full report to the viceroy. Right? So, what he did here, he now is asking Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar and also bring some influential friends, right? So that they could help in the process. And he sent some of the instructions to the ashram as well, and he sent a full report to the viceroy. So morning found the town of Motihari black with peasants. Here it means that in the morning the town of Motihari was full with peasants. They did not know Gandhi's record in South Africa. It means they were not aware of Gandhi's achievements in South Africa. They had merely heard that Mahatma, who wanted to help them, was in trouble with the authorities. Right? So they only knew that Mahatma Gandhi, the one who was going to help farmers, has now been taken up in the, grip of authorities, British authorities. Their spontaneous demonstration in thousands, spontaneous, that comes very naturally. Demonstration means show, right? So the spontaneous demonstration in thousands around the courthouse was the beginning of their liberation from the fear of the British. this collection of this gathering of crowd, this was showing that when they gathered around the courthouse, this was showing that it is the beginning stage of their freedom from the fear of the British. Because the major problem of the people was that they were very much afraid of the British officials. They were very much afraid of any action taken without any consideration from the side of British government. They were much afraid of those things. And when they gathered in order to support Mahatma Gandhi outside that courthouse, so it seemed that they have shed off that fear. It seemed that they are becoming free of that fear, right? Next paragraph. The officials felt powerless without Gandhi's cooperation. Obviously, the government officials wanted Mahatma Gandhi to address other people to cooperate. I hope you all must have seen the movie Gabbar, where Gabbar is considered hero by the people. And at the end of the movie, probably like he addresses the crowd, because the crowd had gathered in such a large number around the courthouse that they were not ready to give way to those vehicles of government officials, right? So it was requested by the police and the officials. So they requested Gabbar to address the crowd, address the people, so that they may cooperate. So I think almost the same type of situation was here, right? The officials felt powerless. The officials felt helpless, right? So they felt helpless without Gandhi's cooperation. He helped them regulate the crowd. It means Mahatma Gandhi helped the British officials in controlling crowd. He was polite and friendly. He was giving them concrete proof that their might, hitherto dreaded and unquestioned, could be challenged by Indians, right? So he here explains to them that hitherto means up to this time, right? And dreaded means afraid, the one who is fearful, right? So he explained to them that he was giving a concrete proof about it, that their might, right? Force. Might here means their force, right? Their people. So he says that their might hitherto dreaded means up to this time, the British officials, the British policemen were dreading, right? Were dreading, it means were creating fear in the minds of Indians without any reasons, and unquestioned could be challenged by Indians. So in such a way he gives a kind of proof to the British government that the British government was harassing and bullying Indian people on one pretext or the other without any reason. And yes, Indians do have this much power. Indians do have this much capacity that they are able to gather at one place. They can hold a single mission, and they can also make Britishers powerless, right? The government was baffled. Baffled means confused, right? So the government was baffled at this, right? The prosecutor requested the judge to postpone the trial. Apparently means clearly, right? Evidently, the authorities wished to consult their superiors, right? Everybody was now in confusion, and the prosecutor also requested, right, the judge to get another date for the trial, get it postponed, right? So get it delayed. Very apparently, very clearly, the authorities wished to consult their superiors. They wanted to take advice from some superior person, right? Because they were actually afraid of the acts of Mahatma Gandhi now. Gandhi protested against the delay, right? Mahatma Gandhi, of course, he protested against that delay. He read a statement pleading guilty. He read a statement pleading guilty, right? Pleading guilty means asking guilty. He was involved, he told the court, in a conflict of duties. On the one hand, not to set a bad example as a lawbreaker, on the other hand, to render the humanitarian and national service for which he had come. He disregarded the order to leave, not for want of respect for lawful authority, but in obedience to the higher law of our being, the voice of conscience, he asked the penalty due. So Gandhi here made very much clear that yes, he disobeyed that government order of leaving the place, Champaran, right? He is actually, full of anger at the statement, so he disobeyed that. But again he explains it further that that doesn't mean that he was afraid of anyone, that he had to come to court, but he didn't want to set a bad example by not obeying the orders, by appearing in the court, and by making statements for the support of people, right? So what he says here, that on the other hand, not to set a bad example as a lawbreaker, means he didn't want to be called as a lawbreaker by the people, because he wanted to teach them law and discipline, in fact, right? And he further asked for the due penalty. The magistrate announced that he would pronounce sentence after a 2-hour recess. Like, the magistrate asked for the announcement of the result, but after a lunch break of 2 hours, and asked Gandhi to furnish bail for those 120 minutes. He asked Gandhi, like, Gandhi should furnish a bail, right, for these 2 hours, but Gandhi denied, he refused, right? The judge released him without bail. What else he could do? The judge had to release Gandhi for that period without seeking any bail. When the court reconvened, it means when the court restarted its activity, the judge said that he would not deliver the judgment for several days. Meanwhile, he allowed Gandhi to remain at liberty. Means Gandhi was set free by the court till the declaration of the result, till the declaration of the final judgment, right? And the judge here announces that the final judgment may come after many days, right? He will not be able to deliver it for many days, because he actually needed time for discussion, because he had probably got the hint that he is going to take such a person in conflict who can prove much harmful for the business of British government here in India. So he wanted a few days time for the announcement of results, right? So, if you remember, children, Mahatma Gandhi called Rajendra Prasad along with some influential person. So, here comes a response to that statement. Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu, Maulana Mazharul Haq, and several other prominent lawyers had arrived from Bihar. They conferred with Gandhi, right? So here they conferred means talked, had conference, conversed with Gandhi. What would they do if he was sentenced to prison? Gandhi asked, right? Why, the senior lawyer replied, they had come to advise and help him. If he went to jail, there would be nobody to advise and they would go home. So that was a conversation with among them, that when they conferred with, when they talked with Gandhi, right? What would they do, right? They asked Mahatma Gandhi that what the lawyers, what the people would do if Gandhi is put into jail, right? So of course, why the senior lawyer replied that they had come to advise and help him, right? Guide him and help him. So if Gandhi would Gandhi would be sent to jail, there would be no other person, no, not such a body who would advise them, right? And they would obviously go back home. But see what happens next. What about the injustice to the sharecroppers? Gandhi demanded. Gandhi was disgusted at the statement of these influential, so-called influential lawyers, that they would go back to their homes. He asked that what about the injustice to the sharecroppers? Means who would bring justice to them? The lawyers withdrew to consult. Of course, they wanted to talk to one another. Rajendra Prasad had recorded the upshot of their consultations. they thought among themselves. It means now the writer is telling us that Rajendra Prasad had recorded whatever those influential lawyers conversed, right? What they talked about. They thought among themselves that Gandhi was totally a stranger, and yet he was prepared to go to prison for the sake of the peasants. If they, on the other hand, being not only the residents of adjoining districts, adjoining means nearby, right? So, joining the place, districts, but also those who claim to have served these peasants should go home, it would be shameful desertion. Desertion means leaving. So they felt insult at discussing that Gandhi is a stranger, still Gandhi is ready to help the peasants, and still he is ready to go to jail for the sake of those peasants only. Gandhi personally has nothing to do with that, right? But he wanted to help those sharecroppers, help those poor peasants who were working as tenants on the land of Englishmen, right? So Gandhi was totally a stranger for them. Even then, he was ready to go to jail for these people. On the other hand, right? So these lawyers who were there, living there in the adjoining districts, who were there attached to those families of farmers, so they were showing their back in this situation. So they felt ashamed on their decision, and they wanted to change it. Next paragraph read, they accordingly went back to Gandhi and told him they were ready to follow him to jail. The lawyers here asked Gandhi that they are ready to accompany him to jail. The Battle of Champaran is won, he exclaimed. Right? So, here, when Gandhi sees unity among people, he feels that this battle has been won. Right? Then took a piece of paper and divided the group into pairs and put down the order in which each pair was to court arrest. Right? So, they prepared a plan like this by dividing the group into two parties. Right? And like thinking that which pair would go to the court for arrest, right? Several days later, Gandhi received a written communication from the magistrate informing him that the lieutenant governor of the province had ordered the case to be dropped. Civil disobedience had triumphed the first time in modern India. You know, at this point of time, Gandhi received a letter, right? He received a letter from whom? From the magistrate, right? That was not a small thing from him, that he received a letter from a magistrate, and magistrate informed Gandhi in that letter that they have, right, the lieutenant governor of that province, of that area, had decided that they would not pursue that case any further, because British government here is afraid of Mahatma Gandhi now. See what they compromised in the next paragraph. Gandhi and the lawyers now proceeded to conduct a far flung inquiry into the grievances of the farmers, because now Gandhi feels that they have won the battle, because the civil disobedience had won, right? The civil disobedience which they had started, it has got a victory for the first time in front of Britishers. So Gandhi and other lawyers now proceeded to conduct a far-flung inquiry. They wanted to collect the remaining all the details of the grievances, of the problems of the farmers, right? Depositions by about 10,000 peasants were written down, and notes made on other evidences. It means so many people complained, right? About 10,000 peasants. Documents were collected. The whole area throbbed with the activity of the investigators and the vehement protests of the landlords. Right? It means the entire documentation was done, the proofs were collected. Right? So the whole area was, throbbed with the activity of the investigators. So that means that the entire far flung, remote, they said that the entire area was throbbed means quivered with the vehement, that means having forceful, right? So the conditions were that the documents were being collected and the whole area, right? So it was quivered And finally, the activities of the investigators increased, and vehement protests of the landlords. So there were forceful protests from the sides of landlords, right? So, in June, Gandhi was summoned to Sir Edward Gate, the Lieutenant Governor. You know, the Lieutenant Governor who had given the idea of dropping down the case. So, in June, Gandhi was called to Sir Edward Gate, the one who was Lieutenant General, Governor, right? Before he went, he met leading associates and again laid detailed plans for civil disobedience if he should not return. Gandhi was such a keen observer of things. He was, he had such a sharp vision that he thinks that he may or may not return. So he wanted to make arrangements, arrangements for the cases of those poor sharecroppers in his absence in case he doesn't return, right? Next paragraph. Gandhi had for protracted interviews. Protracted means he had four lengthy interviews, long interviews with the lieutenant governor, right? Who, as a result, appointed an official commission of inquiry into the Indigo sharecropper situation. Of course, Gandhi was such an influential personality that he, forced that lieutenant governor to start inquiry into the case of those sharecropper situation, right? The commission consisted of landlords, government officials, and Gandhi as the sole representative of the peasants. Sole means the only representative of the peasants, right? So here the commission, right? The commission which was consisted of landlords, government officials, and Gandhi. Gandhi became the representative of the farmers there, right? So see, the inquiry has started. Gandhi remained in Champaran for an initial uninterrupted period of 7 months and then again for several shorter visits. The visit undertaken casually on the entreaty, on the petition of an unlettered peasant. Unlettered, I hope illiterate, the ones who are not educated, peasant, in the expectation that it would last a few days, right? Unoccupied almost, and sorry, it occupied almost a year of Gandhi's life. Time is such a thing which you can gift to other people, and it would never come back, right? Gandhi, I would not say wasted. Gandhi invested full 1 year of his life, almost 1 year of his life, on these sharecroppers, on these helpless peasants, right? He stayed consecutively, uninterrupted means consecutively 7 months there, and again he had to go there for shorter visits again and again, right? So the visit undertaken casually, so that was undertaken very casually on the petition of uneducated parents, right? So in the expectations that it would last a few days, because everybody was hopeful now. Everybody was seeing a ray of hope, as they can clearly see the efforts of Mahatma Gandhi, and they can feel the fear in the minds of British personals, right? Next paragraph. The official inquiry assembled a crushing mountain of evidence against the big planters, right? And when they saw this, they agreed in principle to make refunds to the peasants. But how much must we pay? They asked Gandhi. Now the British officials are all in line to make, compensation for the loss of the peasants. But they asked Gandhi, in fact, how much they should pay. See, they have come to the point now. Next paragraph. They thought he would demand payment in full of the money which they had illegally and deceitfully extorted. Extorted means something taken, forcefully from the sharecroppers. He asked only 50%. Mahatma Gandhi was asked by the British officials that how much compensation they should pay to the sharecroppers in this situation. Gandhi asked only 50%. So there he seemed adamant. Adamant means stubborn there he seemed that he would not move even a little bit, writes Reverend J.Z. Hodge, that was a British missionary in Champaran who observed the entire episode at close range. It means, so Hodge was a British missionary, so he had come to Champaran and he was observing the entire event very closely. So, thinking probably that he would not give the way, the representatives of the planters offered to refund to the extent of 25% only, and to his amazement, Mr. Gandhi took him at his word, thus breaking the deadlock. So, deadlock means, Gandhi was first adamant at taking 50% compensation of the loss, right? That the peasants may also not be happy with that because they wanted 100% compensation for their loss, but Gandhi demanded 50 because he knew that 100% would not be done by the Britishers. But 50% even was not acceptable to them. Even British officials felt that Gandhi is adamant at taking, this much amount, this amount of 50%, this share of 50%, right? Even then, they somehow convinced Mahatma Gandhi that they can pay 25% only, right? So, the fact remained that Gandhi somehow adjusted and said yes to this, right? And to his amazement, means they were surprised that Mahatma Gandhi had settled for 25% by breaking the deadlock, right? See, the peasants and other officials may be displeased with this decision of Mahatma Gandhi, but Mahatma Gandhi would justify why he took this decision. This settlement was adopted unanimously by the commission, right? The settlement was adopted unanimously. So, Gandhi explained that the amount of refund was less important than the fact that the landlords had been obliged to surrender part of the money, with it part of their prestige. Gandhi made them understand with much of the patience that it is not the money that matters. Money doesn't matter that much. In fact, we should feel victory, we should feel proud that British people have also surrendered their prestige, right? So they have lost their prestige also. In this case, we have not only won by taking money, we have taken the prestige of British people, right? Therefore, as far as the peasants were concerned, the planters had behaved as lords above the law. Obviously, that was very much clear, right? The planters had behaved as lords. Lords means heads, right? Peasants used to do entire labor, and the planters behaved as the heads above the law. Now the peasant saw that he had rights and defenders. He learned courage. Now the people, the common people, the poor peasants had begun to gather courage. Events justified Gandhi's position. Within a few years, the British planters abandoned their estates. Events justified means, we often say that if a thing is started once, so the other things fall in line. So within a few years, within just 2 to 3 years, the British planters begin to leave their land, abandoned their estates, means leave their property in India, which reverted to the peasants. Indigo sharecropping disappeared. Obviously, that reverted means that came back to the Indian peasants, and in that indigo sharecropping disappeared with that. Gandhi never contented himself with large political or economic solutions. It means Gandhi never felt contented with these situations, right? So, he saw the cultural and social backwardness in Champaran villages and wanted to do something about it immediately, right? So, Gandhi saw that people are much backward culturally as well as socially in Champaran villages in the Champaran district, right? And he wanted to do something for them. See what he did. He appealed for teachers. It means he requested that whosoever is able to teach, they may please come forward for the help of people to educate them. Because children, what we have read till now, why the peasants were so much suppressed? Because they were not having knowledge, right? So they were not updated. So he asked the teachers to do the task. He requested the teachers to do the task, right? So see who comes forward. So, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh, two young men who had just joined Gandhi as disciples, and their wives volunteered for the task. Volunteered means they come forward to contribute their skills. They come forward to help Gandhi in making the people educated. Both these people, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh, along with their wives, the four people here come forward. Several more come from Bombay, Pune, and other distant parts of the land. Means following them, several people right for came forward. So Devadas, Gandhi's youngest son, arrived from the ashram, and so did Mrs. Gandhi. Means Kasturba and Devadas, they also came to for the help of people. Primary schools were opened in 6 villages. Kasturba taught the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. So a campaign of cleanliness and a campaign to eradicate illiteracy was started by Mahatma Gandhi, his son, his wife, by appealing to the other teachers from various parts of the country. Now he had taken up such a mission which could accomplish the actual task of bringing independence for the country. Right? Health conditions were miserable. Health conditions were very poor in that area. Gandhi got a doctor to volunteer his services for 6 months. Volunteer means he got a doctor ready to work for improving the health conditions of the people, and he did a commitment of serving the people for 6 months free of cost, right? Three medications were available. One was castor oil. It is almost found in all the homes nowadays also. Castor oil, quinine, and sulfur ointment. If anyone showed a coated tongue, was given a dose of castor oil and his problem was cured. Anybody with malaria received quinine plus castor oil, and anybody with skin eruption, skin problems, they received ointment plus castor oil. So this was a kind of service started by the doctor on Gandhi's pleading, right? So he started it in order to cure the people of their medical issues, of their health issues. Gandhi noticed the filthy state of women's clothes. Filthy again, that means poor state of women's clothing. He asked Kasturbai to talk to them about it. He asked his wife, right, to talk to those women that why the people wear such dirty clothes, right? One woman took Kasturbai to her hut and said, "Look, there is no box or cupboard here for clothes. The sari I am wearing is the only one I have." You know, how can they wash those clothes? They told Kasturbai that some of them had the only clothes that they are wearing. They don't have any cupboards, they don't have any almirahs in which they can put clothes. In fact, they don't have any clothes which they don't have any clothes which they can wear, right? During his long stay in Champaran, Gandhi kept a long distance watch on the ashram. Long distance watch means he was watching his ashram. He was having an eye on the activities of his ashram while staying in Champaran also. He sent regular instructions by mail and asked for financial accounts. Once he wrote to the residents that it was time to fill in the old latrine trenches and dig new ones, otherwise, the old ones would begin to smell bad, right? So he used to instruct them while sitting in Champaran, and he used to converse them by mail, and he asked them for the financial accounts, that how like in loss or in like profit it's going. right? So once he wrote to the residents, he wrote a letter to the residents writing that the washrooms they are using, right, so they may start smelling very badly, or the people should fill in those with mud, or they should fill in those with sand, and the new ones should be started, the new ones should be dug, so that in order to prevent the bad stinking, the bad smelling from the older ones, right? Next paragraph. The Champaran episode was a turning point in Gandhi's life. What I did, he explained, was a very ordinary thing. I declared that the British could not order me about in my own country. Right? So Gandhi was not at all proud of his act. Of course, he did an extraordinary thing. He made the peasants happy by, providing them with their rights, and by convincing the British officials to undertake such a commitment with the peasants. But he didn't feel himself as a hero. He said that what I did was a very ordinary thing, right? He declared that the British could not order him about in his own country, because this is his own country. British people, British officials cannot impose any order on him, right? But Champaran did not begin as an act of defiance. It grew out of an attempt to alleviate the distress of large number of poor peasants, right? This was the typical Gandhi patron. His politics was intertwined with the practical day-to-day problems of the millions of people. He was not a loyalty to abstractions. He was a loyalty to living and human beings. A very good statement the writer gives. He was not a loyalty to abstractions, means he believed in doing things actually. Gandhi was not of the opinion that yes, you may preach something, right, or and sorry, you may preach something and you may or may not practice it. But Gandhi was of such a courageous mindset, such a straight mindset, that he believed in doing things. He believed in helping the living human beings, like not in doing those works, those matters which are actually not practical, right? So here, this was the typical Gandhi patron, right? So he did politics, but his politics was always accompanied with the practical day-to-day problems of the people. So if everything Gandhi did, moreover, he tried to mold a new free Indian who could stand on his own feet and thus make India free, right? So in every task of Mahatma Gandhi that he did, right? So he tried to mold a new free Indian. He tried to give shape to the characters of people, right? So whatever he did was of a great value, right? And he tried to mold a new free Indian who could stand on his feet and thus make India free. He wanted to fill that much moral support in the minds of people that they can free themselves and they can stand on their own feet. It means they can become self dependent. So next paragraph, the last event of this write up. Early in the Champaran action, Charles Freer Andrews. Charles Freer Andrews was the English pacifist who had become a devoted follower of the Mahatma. Right? English, he was an English pacifist. Right? Pacifist is the one who is against war. Right? The one who is in the favor of peace. Right? So Charles Fair Andrews was a pacifist and he was in English, right? He became a devoted follower of Mahatma Gandhi, right? He came to bid Mahatma a farewell before going on a tour of duty to the Fiji Islands, because he had to go to Fiji Islands in order to do his duty. He had come to meet Mahatma Gandhi before departure. Gandhi's lawyer friends thought it would be a good idea. Lawyers always think of scheduled activities. So, Gandhi's lawyer friends thought that it would be a good idea for Andrews to stay in Champaran and help them. Right? So, they wanted that Gandhi should persuade Andrews to stay with them. Andrews was willing if Gandhi agreed. You know, the British, that Englishman was ready to stay with those lawyers and Gandhi if Gandhi had said so. But, Gandhi was vehemently opposed. Gandhi strongly opposed this idea. Strange. Why? He said, you think that it is. You think that in this unequal fight it will be helpful if we have an Englishman on our side, right? This shows the weakness of your heart. Means Gandhi scolded even. Gandhi even rebuked his lawyer friends. Why? Because he asked them that it shows that they are cowards. It shows that they are weak at their heart because they are seeking the help of an Englishman to fight their battle against the English. So the cause is just that you must rely upon yourselves to win the battle. He asked the people to learn self-reliance. Right? Rely on means depend on. Right? He asked the people to depend upon themselves. You should not seek a prop in Mr. Andrews. Prop means a kind of helping material or a helper. He told them that they should not find a helper in Mr. Andrews because he happens to be an Englishman. Right? So he asked his lawyer friends that they should not take the help of this Charles Fair Andrews because he is an Englishman. In fact, they should become self-dependent. Right? He had read our minds correctly, Rajendra Prasad comments. And we had no reply. Of course, the lawyers had no reply. Gandhi, in this way, taught us a lesson in self-reliance. It means Rajendra Prasad is of the thinking that here Mahatma Gandhi taught them self-reliance. Mahatma Gandhi taught them self-dependence, that one should become self-dependent. Self-reliance, Indian independence, and help to sharecroppers were all bound together. In this lesson, the writer has told us that self-reliance, Indian independence. Self-reliance means the teaching that Mahatma Gandhi gave to these lawyer friends, that they should not be dependent upon Englishmen to fight their battle. Right? Second is Indian independence, and the help to those sharecroppers of Champaran were all bound together. In this entire lesson, the writer has tried to convey that how greatly a very short part of Gandhi's, life has been depicted. Right? In the introduction itself, I told you, like Louis Fisher has talked about how Gandhi's advent in freedom movement was a very significant event, and it had become possible due to Champaran episode. Right? Where Gandhi showed the best traits of his personality, where he showed his actual character, and he led the people by his moral doings. Right? So this was all about the chapter. You may have a screenshot of the questions. You need to attempt these questions, and of course the answer key would be shared with all of you the very next day, but you need to attempt these questions. So I hope you have understood the lesson. It was a bit difficult one, but yes, you have to do it, right? So have a good day. Thank you.